Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pelham School District Today. Today I have with us our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Natasha Kolmainen, and she's going to be here to discuss a little bit about assessment and how that has changed in the past year. So, Natasha, there have been quite a few changes in the assessment landscape this past year. Can you describe a little bit about them and what led to them?
Definitely. We've actually made quite a few changes almost at every grade level this past year. Most of them in an attempt to streamline and partly in response to statewide changes. The first is that NECAP, which was our state accountability test in grades 3 through 8 and 11, was replaced by Smarter Balanced. So that was a state-driven change. And as a result, we needed to look at some of our other assessments, because in the past, NECAP was given in the fall, Smarter Balance was given in the spring, and we had some other assessments that were also given in the spring, and we knew that that was just going to create too much assessment at that time of the year. So we had to kind of look at the overall system and see where we could make some adjustments. We decided to stop giving NWEA, which is a test we had given in the spring in grades 3 through 8, so we eliminated that altogether. We also made the decision to replace Ames-Webb, which was an assessment that we gave in grades 3 through 5, with something called IReady. And we actually added IReady at the 6, 7, and 8 level, because by removing NWA, we had a little bit of a gap there in terms of the information that we needed. We also made a change at the high school. This year we provided all students in grades 9, 10, and 11 the opportunity to take the PSAT, and that was in anticipation of the SAT becoming the statewide accountability test at grade 11. So that replaces Smarter Balance. So in the last 3 years, the high school students have gone from taking NECAP to taking Smarter Balance and now to taking SAT. So that's a lot of change up there for them. Overall, by making all of these changes, we've reduced the amount of time students are actually taking assessments, which is important because we don't want to be over-testing and losing that instructional time. We've also made it so that our assessments are more closely aligned to our curriculum, which is very important. And overall, we've saved money by making these changes, which is another consideration.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about IReady.
Yes.
So we do IReady grade 2 through 8.
Yep.
And one of the benefits of that is our 5th, 6th transition. So
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about why that's so beneficial?
Yep. IReady is an assessment that's actually done 3 times a year. We used to just have a once-a-year assessment, 6 through 8, actually 5 through and 5. So this provides us more information. It's consistent information from elementary school to the memorial school so that it's comparable. So we can really track growth in a student's progress continuously from grade 2nd to 8 now with one tool, which is something we were lacking. There was some shifts from one tool to another, not always comparable, not always the same information. So, and this particular assessment, IReady, takes less time than the NWEA test. So that was a really important shift for us, and it was really driven by requests from the teachers in terms of needing an assessment tool that was more aligned to what they were doing in the classroom, gave them some data that they could really just quickly assess, look at, and make immediate changes in their classroom. We piloted it at the end of last school year, and overwhelmingly the teachers were happy with the amount of time it took to get actionable information and the information that was provided. So it's really great that they get actual lessons that they can then go and use in their classroom with, and it tells them exactly which group of students would benefit from those lessons. So it really does have a very direct relationship between the assessment results and what teachers can do in the classroom, which is something that they needed. So it filled a void.
So you had said that we're actually assessing less
Yes.
than we were before, but we're using IReady 3 times a year.
Right.
So, but the IReady is such a shorter assessment than what we were using in the past, and it allows us to kind of take the temperature
Yeah.
of the students a couple times during the year, so we're not waiting to the end of the year to find out that somebody is behind
Right.
or somebody is way ahead and they're bored and we need to challenge them a little bit more. We
Exactly.
can do all of that with that those assessments. So
Right.
I'm going to shift a little bit to the high school
Yes.
because this is really exciting.
Yes.
The PSAT, which is the preliminary scholastic aptitude test, if I recall correctly, and most people know it as the PSAT.
Yep.
Many of our listeners who have gone to college are probably familiar with the PSAT. They probably took it when they were in 11th grade, may have even taken it in 10th grade. I know that I took it when I was a 10th grader. I
Yep.
took it again when I was an 11th grader. And then the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, that I took in the spring of my junior year to help me apply for college. Well, now all of our high school students are taking the PSAT in 9, 10, and 11.
Yes.
So they take that in the fall. And then our grade 11 students are required to take the SAT
Correct.
this coming school year. And they're not necessarily required by us, they're required by the state. Can you talk a little bit about what that requirement is and why it's a requirement now
Sure.
and it didn't used to be?
Sure. So we've always been required to have an 11th grade test. So as I mentioned, it was kneecap, then it was Smarter Balance, and in the future it will be SAT. So as part of, it's actually federal law that says that we have to test students in English language arts and math every year and once in high school. Every year at the elementary level, starting in grade 3, and then once at the high school. So that state requirement has always been referred to as the state accountability test. So that's what we have to do. And by moving it to the SAT, it really has become a more useful test than it ever was in the past. In the past, it really was just a test we had to give, and students didn't necessarily see the value in it or really get anything for it. And now by moving to the SAT, they're able to have a free assessment opportunity that they can then use for a college application if they should choose to. But it really becomes a much more useful test that it's not just about what the schools need to do in order to meet a federal mandate. It now is something that the students will have in their hand and be able to do something with.
So the students taking the SAT will actually get a college report.
They will. Yep.
So providing they take the official
Test.
college SAT. There will be some students that will take the SAT that maybe they need certain accommodations or modifications.
Yes.
Because it's the state accountability test that won't allow it to be a college reporting piece. But
Yep.
that's a limited number of students.
Very
So-
limited. Yep, we've gotten some information around that, and there will be pretty much all of the accommodations that are available, were available to students last year, will be available this year, and likely if they took advantage of an accommodation in the past, that will still allow them to use it as a report. As you said, it's a very small group of students who will need a little bit more. In which case this will be a great practice opportunity for them. They can practice it for free, the score's not reported anywhere, and then they can go on and take the test at a later date at their own expense, but they've gotten that experience to do it with the accommodations they need, and then they can say, oh, well, I can do it without this, so I'm going to try, and then they'll have another opportunity. So it's kind of a free practice.
So I'll put my parent hat on for a minute.
Yeah.
So as a parent of a college student, I know that I spent somewhere around $80 for my child to take the SAT when
Yep.
she was a junior in high school. They will no longer have to do that if they only take the test once.
Yep.
The SAT will be offered on March 2nd
Yes,
here in Pelham.
statewide.
And statewide, they will do
Yes.
that, yep. And students will get their scores back. If the score isn't what they want it to be, then they can go out and take it again. At that point, it would be at their own expense, but there are a lot of students that are going to take the SAT on March 2nd. They're going to get their score, and that's all they needed
Right.
to apply for college, and now it's actually a cost-saving measure for families within our community as well, so that's kind of nice.
Absolutely, and in fact, even more so, if a student is receiving free or reduced lunch right now, not only do they get that test on March 2nd that's provided by the state, they'll actually get a voucher to take it again for free, which is an amazing opportunity. And then they will also get 4 vouchers for free college applications.
Wow.
So essentially, the first barrier for many students to the college application process is just paying for the applications. And once you go through the application process, of course, then there's the opportunity for financial aid and assistance. But if that first barrier is the stopping point for a student, they don't know what the potential financial assistance packages are. So if you're currently on free or reduced lunch or on free and reduced lunch at the time that we test, you will get that second opportunity to take the SAT, and you will get 4 vouchers for applications, which is an incredible opportunity.
So that's something important, I think, for the public to be aware of. We often have students that qualify for free and reduced lunch at the high school level, and they do not submit applications because they decide they're going to eat a different way.
Yeah.
This is one of those incentives to, if you think you qualify for free or reduced lunch, submit your application.
Yes.
You don't have to take the free lunch,
Nope.
but if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, then you would qualify for these benefits, which would be an additional SAT
Yes.
test if they needed to take it again, which is about $75, $80,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, as well as 4 college applications, vouchers for college application fees. That's a lot of money
It is.
that somebody could save if they qualify for free and reduced lunch. So
Yes.
if you need a free and reduced lunch application, you can get them in the main office.
Yep.
So all you have to do is ask for them, and we will send them. We do send them home at the beginning of every school year.
Yep.
But I'm sure at this point people have thrown them out if they
Right.
haven't filled them out. So we certainly have them and can
Yes.
get them to you.
Yes.
So let's go back to Smarter Balanced,
Yes,
because those results actually were released last week.
they were.
So how'd we do?
We did overall very well. Our K through 8 program, if you look at the program as a whole, is above state average, and that's very exciting. We did have some areas that we need to work on. Specifically, our high school scores were not where we would like them to be, and we are going to take a look at that very closely and see what it is we need to do, whether it be looking at the educational program, whether it be looking at how we administered that test. And that, of course, will impact how we administer tests in the future as well. And we're going to look at our math scores specifically. Our math program was slightly lower than our ELA program, and of course we want to make sure that both programs are equally strong.
Okay, so when we look at those Smarter Balanced results, how are we going to use them? What are we going to do?
Well, it's really important that we keep in mind that this is the baseline. So this is the first year that we've given this test. It's unlike any other test we've ever given.
How so?
Well, in many ways. Partly the way that it's administered. It is completely on the computer. There is no paper and pencil portion of it. So that is different for the students. It's a different experience than what they've had in the past. They have taken computer-based tests in the past, but not to the extent of the types of questions or the writing. The computer-based assessments we've taken in the past are pretty much multiple choice. Whereas this test required extended writing, it required some manipulation of the questions and the answers to like fill in boxes and write out things versus just A, B, C, or D. But it is a very rigorous test, and it's a test worth taking. It measures critical thinking, it measures problem solving in a way that we've never been able to measure in the past. So it is valuable, and it's important that we've kind of upped our game in terms of what we're assessing and how we're assessing it. But again, it is a baseline, and at the same time that we were learning to give the test, the kids were taking the test. So there was no opportunity for us to practice or give kids really a chance at knowing how to navigate around this test. It really was, they were learning how to do it at the same time as we were giving it. But we do get very specific information for every student. We get an overall score for the student, and then we get some detailed information at what's called a claim level. So at every parent, or most parents, if they were here last year, every parent should have received a report late last week with their students' results, and they'll see that there's an overall score, and then in math there's I might get this backwards. And in math, there's 3 claims, and in ELA, there's 4 claims. That's right. And those claims are just one level deeper in terms of what is it my child's able to do well and what might they be struggling with. So in English language arts, there may be a claim around writing or a claim that says research. And that goes one step below that overall score and says, okay, how did my son or daughter do in the area of writing? And so that specific information can help us to say, okay, you know what, we're gonna make sure that we emphasize this this area a little bit more, whether it be with this group of students or whether it would be at this grade level. And because we can look at that information at a grade level and say, you know, there was a relative strength at this grade level in writing, but synthesis and analysis was a little bit weaker. So we can look at our curriculum and say, you know what, is that something we do want to work on? But because this is baseline, because it is the first time we've ever given this test, it's really important that we look at some other data too at the same time before we make any kind of wholesale changes, or really even if we start making changes for an individual student. Because if the other information that we have is not consistent with what Smarter Balance told us, we do have to pause and say, well, is that because this is the first time we've taken this, we were learning how to take it at the same time, or is it because they measure slightly different things? So basically, we won't be making any wholesale changes based on this one test. We will look at this test in comparison to the other data points that we have, the other information we have, and if they're consistent, then by all means, we need to move forward with making some changes. But if there's some inconsistencies in that information, we need to gather more before we make any changes, because it would be not in our best interest to go off and make a significant change and then find out, well, you know what, it's really because we didn't know how to administer that part of the test. And there we've gone and made a change, and maybe it wasn't the right change to make. So I think it's important to kind of put it in the context of it being the first time and one piece of information.
When we talk about making changes, what might those changes look like if we decide we need to make some?
So really we look at I would say, three major areas. We look at our curriculum overall. So is there something we're not teaching enough of? Is there something we're spending too much time on? So a lot of these assessments help us to really dive into, you know, is our educational program what it's supposed to be? And the first step is one of those areas is curriculum. The other area has to do around instruction and professional learning for our staff. So if, for example, we have a couple of different pieces of evidence that indicate that fractions is something that our students are continually struggling with, well, then we're probably going to want to say, okay, well, is it on our curriculum in the right place and to the right amount? Yes. Then the next question is, okay, do we have the right resources? Are our professional staff well trained in order to teach that skill? So at that point, we can start looking at, do we need to find a different resource? And oftentimes those resources are readily available online. Or do we need to send teachers to a training and help them to be more expert in that area? So really when we start looking at instruction, it's two things. It's resources and professional learning. And our staff are always eager to learn. When they're given opportunities to go to trainings, they often jump at it. So that's never a concern. And then the final place in terms of changes that we would look at starts to look at specific groups of students. So if we start seeing, for example, that a particular group of students, whether it be students who are receiving special ed services, students who are in need of enrichment, if those particular groups aren't achieving at a level or at a pace that we would like to see, we might start making changes in those programs that and those support systems that are there for them. So if that starts to be an area that we're consistently identifying, we might say, well, maybe we need to look at our RTI programs and say, are the interventions that we're using really meeting the needs of our students, or do we need to start thinking about what other interventions? Is there a need for more resources for students who are excelling and need to be pushed beyond what's happening in the classroom? So it's really those three areas that we can safely start to make some decisions and changes about when we look at these global, big item kind of assessments, these once a year type assessments. It's not intended to be an assessment that says specifically for this student I'm going to alter their plan. It is not a diagnostic test. So we have to be careful about that because that's not what it's intended to do.
That's more of our IReady piece.
Exactly. Our IReady piece is intended to be diagnostic. It is intended to say, okay, for this student, I need to do this. This is a hole, or this is a strength. And that is exactly what that tool is intended to do. Whereas the Smarter Balanced Assessment tool is not intended to be that specific for an individual student, which is why we need multiple assessments. Yeah.
So, and you know, I want to jump back a little bit to that instruction piece where you talked about professional development.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know sometimes when parents or the community see the school calendar and they see a professional development day or early release days, and they're thinking, why are the kids out of school?
Right.
This is why.
Exactly.
So that we can provide the training and the expertise for our teachers in how to teach a particular skill or claim or area in a more effective way, and we need time to be able to do that, and that's what we do on those days. They're not they're not days off for teachers. They're actually training days to help us be more effective with the students when they come back into the classroom. So those are very, very valuable days, those professional development days and early release days.
Yeah, they are.
In any district. So
Absolutely.
we talked quite a bit about the SAT right at the beginning. I just want to jump back a little bit to the PSAT.
Yep.
Because those scores we do not have yet, but when are we anticipating those?
December.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
which is great because there's a nice quick turnaround now that is something we never used to have. Our old assessment systems often took months to get results. And so the nice thing about the IReady especially, you have the results right away. There's no wait. And PSAT is pretty short turnaround, just a couple of, well, we took it mid-October, we'll get it by beginning early December.
So we're going to get these scores mid-December. What is it that people want to do with those, and what are we going to do with those?
Well, this is one of the most exciting parts about this change, and I really am excited that here in Pelham we are able to offer the PSAT to grades 9 through 11, although all districts in the state will take SAT in grade 11, not all of them are offering PSAT. So this is something that we're doing here in Pelham that I think is really exciting. The PSAT scores are intended to be a continuum, so once you take it in the first time in grade 9, every year that you take it, the idea is that your score will go up a little bit, and every time that you take it, you can get your results, and you can go on to Khan Academy. You can create your own account. This is something that it's not. We'll have time during the school day, but it's not something that.
Okay, so Khan Academy.
Khan Academy is a free resource out on the internet, and it's everything from a lesson on how to solve the quadratic equation to Spanish. I mean, literally thousands and thousands of free lessons on almost anything you can imagine, from late elementary, early middle school, all the way up through high school, and it's
college.
Yeah, well, you have a college student, so mine are still in high school. So it's an amazing resource. Literally, you can just kind of type anything in the search field that you're struggling with, and a couple of lessons will come up. But what's happened is the College Board has partnered with Khan Academy to create an SAT preparation course, and they've also created this learning pathway. So if you take your PSAT scores, you go to this Khan Academy site, you set up an account, you link it to your PSAT scores, and it will create an entire learning pathway for you of, based on those results, what you need to work on, just you, specific to your strengths and weaknesses. And that's really powerful, and it's another barrier that's just been taken down, because in the past, people who were preparing for SAT were often spending $600-700 on SAT prep courses, and that really created another financial barrier. And College Board has recognized that. They've decided that that's not what they want to be about, that they want to create opportunities. So they've essentially put all of those test prep companies out of business and created this free learning pathway through the PSAT and a free SAT preparatory course on Khan Academy. So that's really exciting. And it's something that we can help students with, or they can go off and do on their own. It's really very flexible.
So anything else you want to share with us about assessment and the changes that have come up?
I think the most important thing is to recognize that we're really paying attention to the fact that Students feel over-tested. Teachers feel like they're testing too much. Parents feel that way too. And that we've put a lot of time and energy into assessing and looking at assessing our assessment and looking at what it is we're doing, and saying, you know what, there is some truth to that. There is some opportunity here for us to be more efficient and not just always do what we've always done because we've always done it. So it's important to stop and take a moment to look at what you're doing and make sure it's the right path to continue on. We've filled quite a few gaps that we had in our assessment profile. We've reduced the amount of time overall that students are assessing, and we've found assessment tools that provide information and lesson plans even for teachers, that cuts down on the time they have to spend on planning and creating things. So those efficiencies and the cost savings is important. Although that's not always the driver of our decisions, it's nice when a cost saving comes out of making the right decision. So I'm excited about the changes we've made. It's certainly going to take a few years to iron out some kinks and start to see trends in our data. But in terms of the immediate impact on loss of instructional time and limiting that, and the immediate impact on helping teachers to plan for students who are struggling or excelling, I think we've made some really significant improvements in the last 18 months.
Well, thank you for coming
Thank
and
you.
visiting us on Pelham School District today.
Thanks.